AfriKili family, Global Pack Nation, welcome to the Global Pack Show. Well, a few days ago, on Friday, June 27, 2025, something that was hailed as massive happened in the United States in the Oval Office. Donald Trump welcomed representatives from the Democratic Republic of the Congo and the country of Rwanda, the two ministers of foreign affairs. They presented a deal that is supposed to be a peace deal that would bring peace in the Great Lakes region. That is the region that encompasses the Democratic Republic of Congo, Rwanda, Burundi, Tanzania, and so on. Well, there's a conflict in the eastern part of the DRC that has taken millions of lives over the last 30 years. This deal was hailed as a deal that will bring peace in the region, finally, and where Donald Trump would once again showcase that he is the great peacemaker in the world, but also would have unfettered access to minerals, critical minerals that are, prevalent in the eastern part of the DRC. However, as we dig deeper into that deal, is that really the case? Are we actually talking about peace that will benefit the people in the Congo once and for all? Or are we just talking about another trade deal that would greatly benefit the United States of America in terms of minerals, as well as other countries like Rwanda, but whereas the Congolese people will continue suffering without any real benefit? In other words, have the Congolese people once again being betrayed and sold by another trade agreement or peace agreement? We will discuss that in this show. So let's fasten our seatbelts, let's dive in, and let's get to work. AfriKili family and Global Pack Nation, welcome to the Global Pack Show. This is Tony Mfumusimba Kwambamba Ngumbu. Thank you very much for tuning in today on this June 30th, 2025. Today's show will only discuss one topic, so we'll do things a bit differently. We'll talk about that big trade agreement or peace agreement that was presented by Donald Trump in the Oval Office a few days ago. This is a very significant topic, and I think by the end of this show, you will understand why, because it has big implications on the region in general, but also I think the U.S. and the world when it's all said and done. Before starting, let me just thank every single one of you who continue to support our show, our platform, the Global Pack Show, which is under the AfriKili umbrella. The Global Pack Show, which aims to build bridges and strong coalitions within Global Pack communities. Global Pack stands for Global Pan-African Communities. So people of African descent in the United States, in the Caribbean, Latin America, Europe, Africa, and across different African countries. The Global P.A.C. Global Pack. Thank you once again for your support. If you have not done so before we get started, let me ask you to please just take a moment by clicking the subscribe button. Only takes a few seconds, but when you do that, it helps this platform grow, helps our show grow, and it allows you to also become part of our community, because we are a community. We are a growing community. Your feedback and your participation is highly appreciated. Without you, we cannot do it. So thank you very much for taking the time to do that. All right. So as we're talking about the DRC, today happens to be June 30th. June 30th is supposed to be Independence Day in the DRC, because in 1960 on this day is the day when the Democratic Republic of the Congo, which used to be the Belgian Congo, became independent. So it is supposed to be a day of celebration, right? Because after a horrific period of colonization across the African continent, countries fought for their freedom, and 1960 is a very significant year because many African countries gained their independence in that year. And so the Democratic Republic of the Congo, the country which we'll be discussing today, which is the second biggest country in Africa, situated right in the center. If you look at the map of Africa, it is right in the center with a population of about 100 million estimated. Well, gained its independence on June 30th. So again, it's supposed to be a day of celebration. Unfortunately, I personally do not celebrate that country, that day. I'm originally from the DRC, country in which I was born before relocating when I was very young. I left the country at about the age of 5 or so. Well, although it was supposed to be a country of independence, the country really has not been truly liberated over the years. And until this day, it is my conviction, just looking at how things are unfolding in that nation, which is potentially one of the richest nations in the world, given its vast mineral wealth. It is estimated to have trillions and trillions of dollars. The DRC, if it was well managed, right, had the potential to be like the Saudi Arabia of that region and even more. Unfortunately, mismanagement. Some have come to call it the resource curse because it has so much wealth that brings a lot of, I would say, greed, a lot of conflict. So people have called it a curse. In my estimation, it is not a curse. We have countries with great wealth, Saudi Arabia, and the Middle East, and so on, that have greatly benefited from their wealth. It is also possible in the DRC, until we do that, the country will not be truly liberated. But it is also the country of Patrice Lumumba. I'm sure you've heard that name. You've heard the name Lumumba. If not, well, Patrice Lumumba, who was the young, charismatic leader who was one of the leaders, right, of the movement for liberation in the Congo back in the 60s. I actually equate him a lot to Martin Luther King Jr. If you've watched one of my shows, I can't recall which one, I drew a sort of like a parallel, a comparison. Clearly, MLK, Martin Luther King Jr. and Patrice Lumumba operated in different realities. I get it. Nevertheless, there are so many similarities between those two gentlemen who unfortunately were both assassinated. Because on one end, you had a very young man, Patrice Lumumba, who was fighting, who was charismatic, fighting for freedom against colonization. Whereas on the other side, you had Martin Luther King Jr., who was fighting, obviously, in the civil rights movement in the United States, fighting for liberation of Black people in the United States. Unfortunately, both of them were assassinated while fighting in their activism. So they have that in common. Both of them were very young when they were assassinated. MLK, Martin Luther King Jr., was only 39 years old when he was assassinated on April 4th, 1968. 39. So he was assassinated in 1968. Well, 7 years before that, in 1961, is when Patrice Lumumba was also assassinated at the age of 35. So Lumumba assassinated at 35, MLK assassinated at 39. And they were born just a few years apart. They were born like 4 years apart. Martin Luther King Jr. was born on January 15, 1929, whereas Patrice Lumumba was born on July 2nd, 1925. So you have both of these guys born in the late 20s, 1920s. Both of them assassinated in their 30s. Both of them charismatic leaders, great orators, fighting for freedom of Black people. So they have that in common, and obviously both of them have been hailed, throughout Black history and beyond, as very significant people in history. And so I just mentioned that because today, again, independence of the Congo is something that Lumumba fought so hard for, and I posit that if somehow he'd been alive today and he would have witnessed the way things are unfolding, he probably would have been very, very disappointed, because that country that started with great promise has not, unfortunately, met its potential. That is just a reality. Now, that is not a defeatist message, right? Because on this platform, we're not about just complaining all the time, because I believe we do have the ability to solve our problems. We all have the ability to control what we can in terms of our destiny, right? It's not about just being victims. It's about, as the saying goes, it's not about just calling darkness and saying that there is darkness, but about lighting a candle, lighting a light, showing a path. We have that ability. So days such as today for me, it's not a day where I'm depressed, but rather it's a motivating day. It's a day that just gives me that energy as I assess the situation around and say, you know what? This is not the time to lay down our arms, but rather this is the time to strategize. This is the time to continue advancing the cause that we fight for. And within this platform, again, the Global PAC, it is about doing everything we can so that we create strong coalitions and we build bridges between the different Global PAC communities, because in unity, we can transform situations, we can change narratives, we can change our destinies with unity. The challenges are great, but our potential is even far greater. People of African descent across the world, we have tremendous abilities and capabilities if we simply increase our ability to work together, our coalitions strategically. We will change the tides. I strongly believe that. Okay, so Independence Day for the DRC. All right. Now let's go into the topic of today's show. You saw that I titled the show today, Trump's Congo Peace Deal or the Great Mineral Betrayal. So just a quick summary of what happened and how we even got to this place, because I think that is critical if we are to dissect and analyze the potential repercussions of this agreement. All right, so this essentially started unfolding after the debacle when President Zelensky of Ukraine visited the United States. You'll recall he was welcomed into the Oval Office. It was presented as a meeting whereas Zelensky was supposed to sign a mineral deal, right, for rare earth minerals. Because given the geopolitical conflict and the tension, the rivalry between the United States and China, well, China restricted or even prevented rare earth minerals from now being supplied to the United States. And rare earth minerals are critical for our technology revolution as we're going through right now, whether it's green energy and so on, whether it's military technology. Rare earth mineral is just a series of minerals that are very critical. Well, China had China has a dominance, right? And so because Ukraine also has a lot of those minerals within its soil, well, it was presented that so Ukraine would come to the White House, Donald Trump would welcome him, and they would sign an agreement that would give the United States unfettered access to the Ukrainian minerals. Well, as we all know, it didn't pan out that way. No agreement was signed. Zelensky was absolutely not ready to give away his country's right, his citizens' belonging, just also based on policies, because Donald Trump was advancing that there were over $100 billion that was given to the Ukrainian people, which was not even true. So again, I'm not going to revisit that story, but we all saw what happened. It was a big debacle. Ukraine, President Zelensky was humiliated and he left the White House. Well, as that was unfolding, actually right after that, well, now you had the president of the Democratic Republic of Congo, called Felix Tshisekedi, who tried to seize upon that, because it happens that the DRC also has tremendous potential of rare earth minerals, a lot of those minerals under its soil. And so seeing that the deal between Ukraine and the United States fell through, President Tshisekedi of the Congo presented himself. He came to the U.S. and said, wait, actually, we have the minerals and we will give you, this is just a caricature, right? But essentially, this is a principle. So President Tshisekedi of the Congo said to the U.S., we will give you our minerals, just come in exchange for peace. And he went on Fox News, he made interviews, and if you had followed what was happening across, say, the Pan-African movement and so on, there is a big uproar, because this is a time when we have people like, say, for example, Ibrahim Traore. We've spoken at length about him being seen as a great revolutionary who was within the revival of this Pan-African sentiment, right, of where black people around the world are taking position of strength, of unity, of wanting to really transform their realities and their situation, not wanting to just repeat mistakes of the past where you had Western hegemony, right, being exploited by the West, which is why, in countries like Burkina Faso, they are taking control of their economic destiny, like gold that was mined by multinationals. They're taking control of that. Countries like Niger, with General Chiani, Niger, that has a lot of uranium in its soil that was being exploited by French companies and others. Niger said not anymore. So you had that sentiment going across the African continent, just like black people in general, because Ibrahim Traore has support across the global PAC, across the global Pan-African community. He has support in the United States, in African American communities, in the Caribbean, you name it, Latin America. So within that context, to see that there's another president who takes a total different point of view and comes and say, okay, here's my country, just come and take whatever you need. That was essentially what President Tshisekedi was presenting on the table. Come, take any minerals you need in exchange for peace. That caused a big uproar. Now, on the surface of that, you might say, well, what is the problem? Somebody wants peace. Here's a region where millions, estimated that maybe over 10 million people might have died over the last 30 years. So you might say, well, if it brings peace, then what is the problem? We need peace. So he did something commendable. So on the surface, it might seem that way. Well, let's start actually digging deeper on that. Because what was happening at the time? You have to understand that you had cities in the eastern part of the Democratic Republic of the Congo, the part that is actually that's where you have most of the mineral wealth. You had a rebel group called the M23 rebel group that had seized a lot of territory. That was unfolding, where you have this movement called the M23 movement or rebel movement that had seized all that territory. And until this day, they still occupy vast portions of the DRC, that M23 movement. Okay. They were coming, and the Congolese government was totally weak, has a weak army, not able to protect its citizens in those regions. And seeing their total incompetence in terms of being able to protect its population, then they decided to turn to the US to try to get help. Again, you might say, well, what is the problem? Well, there are many problems here. First of all, if we even dissect how we get to that point, that situation should have never happened in terms of having a total inept military force. Because we're talking about a president. I'm talking about President Felix Tshisekedi from the Congo. This is somebody who came into power in 2019. Somebody actually came into power on the onset of another great betrayal of the Congolese people, because now it has been well established he never won the election, right? He came after an agreement between him and the person who was in office before him, called Kabila. They did an agreement so that Kabila would give him power. The agreement was that he would be in power for a while, and then Kabila would eventually come back. There was another person who had actually won. Somebody who, when you say somebody won the election, no, the people chose who they wanted to be the leader of their country. That person was called Martin Fayulu. The person is elected, so the people choose him. But Tshisekedi and Kabila betray the choice and the decision of the people by totally usurping that, and then Kabila gives power to Tshisekedi. So Tshisekedi assumed his presidency after that great betrayal, as I said, betrayal of the people. From the moment he assumes power, stays in for many years, so until last year or early this 2025, We're talking about how many years? 6 years. In 6 years, he had ample opportunities to strengthen his military. He had ample opportunities to reform the nation, administratively speaking, for the nation to become stronger. 6 years is a long time. Also, especially considering that when Tshisekedi was in quote-unquote opposition for all those years, he kept talking about the problem that was plaguing the eastern part of the Congo. He kept naming, for example, Rwanda as being the sponsors of the unrest in the eastern part of the Congo, because a lot of those minerals, the conflicts that is happening in the part that is rich of the Congo, well, although there is unrest, well, without any surprise, mining operations are continuing. And a lot of those minerals are actually fraudulently transitioning into Rwanda and exported from Rwanda. There's actually a UN report also, if you doubt all this is not just me venting and speculation or what's not. You have credible UN reports that are showing that minerals are fraudulently transitioning into Rwanda. So Rwanda had benefited from all that unrest all along. And so Tshisekedi knew that. So for him to come into power and accept to take the seat of president and then do nothing to bolster his defenses to be able to start putting resistance against the intrusion from the country located at the east of the Democratic Republic of Congo, Rwanda, him doing nothing is inexcusable. So not being able to defend his people militarily is also another great betrayal. So one, there's betrayal in terms of taking power or accepting a deal to be given power when you did not win election. You're betraying the people. And then not doing anything to reinforce your military, to provide resistance, to be able to protect your population. Betray the people. During that time, embezzlement continues. You have reports showing how corrupted the government was. So financially, they certainly were benefiting a lot from the situation. A lot of funds that could have helped strengthen the military, reform the military. A lot of those funds is being embezzled in this system of corruption. So, no solution. Territory is being taken, so Tshisekedi turns to the United States asking for help, saying, help us, and provide peace. Now, the way Tshisekedi was presenting this, so this is now where we're not talking about the big betrayal, because this agreement on its face might seem as a good thing, but it is a horrendous agreement that is being signed and agreed upon on the backs of Congolese people with total impunity and injustice. And I will explain myself. Let's start first of all with even the whole idea of going to Trump for peace. Like, I'm not sure which indication you might have that Donald Trump actually cares about peace in the Congo. As a matter of fact, all evidence points to the contrary. Donald Trump is the guy who, on numerous occasions, talked about African countries being shithole countries. That's the sort of respect and consideration he has for African countries. Shithole countries. Those are the words of President Trump. So this is the guy Tshisekedi went to. Trump is the one very recently who was constantly, when he's talking about immigration, advancing lies about the Congo. On numerous occasions, Donald Trump said that the Congo, amongst the undocumented immigrants that come into the U.S. with Biden's open, border policy and so on, Trump has said on numerous occasions that there are people that are living asylums in the DRC. You have in the Congo. He's said that many times. That you have people living asylums in the Congo, leaving prisons, that the Congo people are being released from prisons in the Congo to be poured into the United States. Trump has said it. multiple times. So obviously the guy has no interest about peace in the DRC. Another point, when Cyril Ramaphosa, the president of South Africa, visited the White House, and there was that whole debacle about white genocide when Trump was advancing a total lie about white people being victims of genocide in South Africa to kind of justify his reasoning for giving South Africans refugee status in the US. As he was presenting his evidence of white South African farmers being killed, which again is a big lie. There's no genders. We established that there is definitely crime problems in South Africa, but there's not a problem of genocide against white South African farmers, Afrikaners, because actually even more black people are dying on farms than white people. But anyways, as he's presenting his quote-unquote evidence, he had a stack of pictures to try to prove that white South Africans are being killed. Amongst the pictures that Trump was showing, you had pictures of mass graves and so on in the Democratic Republic of Congo that he was presenting as evidence for South Africa. So the guy had no clue what he was even looking at. It transpired later that it was not pictures from South Africa, but the Congo. So this is the individual that Tshisekedi is going to bring peace in his country. Somebody who considers his countries as shithole countries. Again, somebody who's peddling lies about prisoners and criminals leaving prisons in the Congo to come to the U.S., entering the open borders in the U.S. during Biden's time. Somebody who's presenting pictures from the Congo has no idea. But obviously, the only time Trump showed any interest about supposedly peace in the Congo is when Tshisekedi comes to this individual, to the president of the United States, to say, you can get my minerals. Once you say that, Trump, being the transactional guy, or at least presented as a transactional person, start paying attention. Oh, so there are minerals in your country, the kind of minerals that we need. Fantastic. Let's go and get those minerals. And you're going to give me those minerals? Yes. So obviously, Trump goes straight into it. But also, lately, you know that there's an immense lobby for Donald Trump to obtain the Nobel Peace Prize, right? So his people are pushing that he should get the Nobel Peace Prize. So obviously, Barack Obama was given the Nobel Peace Prize. So Trump is really advancing this agenda of him being the great peacemaker in the world. So this Congolese situation, I mean, here he's signing a peace deal in a situation, a conflict that has been going on for 30 years. He's going to bring peace to the region. There's a whole Iran situation where he is stopping the fight between Israel and Iran, a conflict that Israel started, by the way. But anyways, that is bringing peace. So he's wanting to advance his image of being a great peacemaker en route to maybe getting the Nobel Peace Prize. So all these factors are leading Donald Trump into the DRC. So it has nothing to do with just peace for the Congo. All right. And now the worst part for the Congolese people is that President Tshisekedi had been clamoring that Rwanda is attacking the DRC. That is what he was constantly now clamoring towards before coming to the United States. Rwanda is attacking us. Rwanda is aggressing us. Tshisekedi was saying he would not even negotiate with the rebel group, the M23 rebel group that is seized territory, because in his word, those are just puppets that are being controlled by Rwanda. So he would not even waste his time negotiating with the M23. Even though we found out that he had been negotiating with them, which is another lie he just peddled. But anyways, he was presenting his reason for going to the U.S. that Rwanda was attacking us. And so he would not negotiate with the M23. And so he needed to go to somebody who would force Rwanda from stopping the attack into the Congo. Because in Tshisekedi's words, it is Rwanda that was aggressing us. So that is why he was negotiating minerals for peace. Because again, in his word, Rwanda is aggressing us, so the U.S. will stop Rwanda from aggressing the DRC. Lo and behold, this agreement that is presented, nowhere in the agreement is there any mention of Rwanda removing its troops from the DRC. Nowhere in this agreement is there any acknowledgement of Rwanda attacking the DRC. Nowhere. So what is the point of signing this agreement that you presented as being an agreement that will stop Rwanda from attacking you when the agreement says nothing about Rwanda attacking you? As a matter of fact, the agreement says that with regards to that M23 problem, that it will abide to the negotiations that are ongoing right now in Qatar, in Doha, Qatar. There's negotiation between members of the M23 rebel group and the Congolese government. So this Washington peace deal will factor in whatever agreement will be attained in the other discussions happening in Doha, Qatar. I mean, this is just unfathomable. So you're giving away your minerals, right? Saying that it is because the U.S. will bring peace and will stop Rwanda from aggressing us. Granted, because you were weak and you were not able to build your own military. And then come to find out that agreement does not even take that into consideration. Yet, as Donald Trump said, he has been granted access to minerals in the Congo. So if you're saying that the lack of peace was caused by Rwanda attacking, now you sign a peace agreement that absolutely says nothing about Rwanda attacking you, we have a problem. So where is peace coming from? Now, the representative of the M23 that are holding territory in Eastern Congo said they're not even concerned with this agreement. They will continue their negotiation in Qatar. Nowhere in this agreement is the M23 situation even mentioned. You have UN report after UN report that have proven that Rwanda actually has troops in the Congo, that Rwanda is directly supporting the M23, that Rwanda is benefiting from mineral extraction, but yet you have diplomats from the DRC that sign an agreement that does not take any of that into consideration. That is just amazing. So this is, I'm not sure if this is just betrayal of incompetence or incompetence of the highest level. So this agreement, actually, if you've been following the situation in the Great Lake region, this agreement actually gives Rwanda everything Rwanda needs. Because Rwanda has been saying all along that way, at least, its official position, Rwanda is saying that, wait, we're not attacking the DRC. The M23 is a Congolese problem because the M23 is a Congolese rebel group. It's not us. So the Congolese have to deal with that by themselves. Rwanda is saying, all we're protecting our people in Rwanda because Rwanda is advancing that in the Congo, you had people that had fled the genocide 30 years ago. You had people like the FDLR, which was a group that Kagame's regime, so Paul Kagame is the current president of Rwanda. So he's saying that his Tutsi ethnic people, when the genocide happened 30 years ago, they kicked out the FDLR, which are Hutu ethnic Rwandese, and that those FDLR are currently in Congo, and that they're supported by the Congolese government, and that FDLR group poses a threat to the Rwandan government. And so Rwanda is advancing that they're simply positioned at their border to protect their people against the threat posed by the FDLR. And so this peace agreement that the Congolese government accepted to sign is recognizing that there is an FDLR threat and that they will work with Rwanda to ensure that the FDLR threat is eliminated. Can you imagine? And so it is only after that gradually they will figure out a way for Rwanda to start diminishing its defense capacity along its border. This is just unbelievable. Unbelievable. And then another thing this agreement talks about, which is another great betrayal, it is talking about the inclusion of people from different armed groups to bring them into the Congolese armed forces. It's saying that it's conditional, it's case by case, but this has happened many times in the history of the DRC. You've had groups that take arms in the eastern part of the country. It always happens in the place that has minerals. This never happens in other parts. But they would take arms, create a rebellion, and then negotiate a peace deal, and then they become integrated in the armed forces, but they also are given political positions. So in the political arena today in the Democratic Republic of Congo, you have a lot of former rebels that are ministers of this, that have political appointments and so on. And now we're talking about doing the same thing again with this movement that is holding a lot of territory that, quite frankly, has no incentive right now to even relinquish any of its territory, because the Congolese government has showcased its incompetence, does not have the force, the firepower to do anything. This peace agreement with the U.S. mentioned nothing about M23. The U.S. will not fight for the Congo to remove the M23. So what's the incentive for the M23 to relinquish its territory and bring this so-called peace that we're told that this agreement would bring peace, when we have to wait on negotiation in Doha, which is not led by the United States? So this agreement that was presented as a peace agreement is none of that. If it goes through, it is just allowing the U.S. to come and take all the minerals that it needs. It allows Rwanda, the country that the Congolese government presented as the aggressor, well, a lot of those minerals will still be transitioning through Rwanda. We're talking about co-managing the wealth of the Congo with Rwanda towards the United States. Rwanda presented as the aggressor again by the Congolese government, but now working hand in hand with Rwanda to exploit those minerals. And then total impunity. The perpetrators of the deaths, the millions of people that have died, there's nothing about justice for them. No reparations, there's like nothing. No justice at all. For the families that have lost loved ones, the millions of people that have been displaced by all this conflict, nothing. Total impunity for the aggressor. So this is a sad day for the people of the Congo. The country, essentially the mineral wealth has been sold. The people have been betrayed without getting anything in return. They're not getting anything on the basis of this agreement. Because the reasons that were presented as being the reasons for the lack of peace, well, those reasons are not addressed in this agreement. They're not. So President Tshisekedi has betrayed the people of the Congo. The victims of the Congo have been betrayed by this agreement. And as history looks down on this, I'm not sure what the future will hold, but this specific agreement, I'm sure, will be seen as a great betrayal for the Congolese people. They say people get the leaders they deserve. Well, Tshisekedi was not voted by the Congolese people. They did not choose him. So did the Congolese deserve him? The fact is, people have been complicit, right? Unlike things that are happening, like we see in Kenya, where the young people are revolting, going in the street and rebelling against, measures that are going against their well-being. We're not seeing that in the Congo. So until the people really take matters into their own hand, this sort of nonsense will continue. And Congo is too important of a country to continue down this path. And there's a reason why I'm spending so much time in this country. People like Frantz Fanon said a quote that has been repeated so many times over the decades. A quote you should know, when he says that Africa has the shape of a gun and the trigger is in the Congo. So if you look at the map of Africa and you turn it, yes, Africa will be as if there's a handle, the whole part of West Africa, where you have Senegal, you have Morocco, and so on. If you turn the African continent, that whole part can be where the bullet will come out, would be on the tip, like South Africa. And then we'll go, and then the trigger would be where the Congo is, which is why Frantz Fanon say Africa is in the shape of a gun and the trigger is in the Congo. That's just in terms of imagery. But in terms of the symbolism of it, it is to say that the Congo is so important that if that country, given all of its wealth, if the country assumes its economic destiny and becomes managed properly, and that country actually rises up, the ripple effect will be felt across the African continent and across the world. That is what Frantz Fanon was insinuating. The Congo is an important African country. And I think the powers that be over time have understood that, which is why, in a sense, you've always had a lot of external influences to, in a way, also prevent that country from developing. But we have to take matters into our own hand, which is why what this platform advances, AfriKili, the Global Pack, it's about building coalitions. It's about building bridges across Global Pack communities. It's about creating critical masses so we can put our hands, efforts, resources together to upend unjust situations such as these. This is a time of great Pan-African awakening. We're already seeing the signs. Ibrahim Traore, Tiani, Assimi Goïta in Mali. We have waves happening across the Black world. And we need something needs to happen in the Congo. Like, if this country is to rise up, it is certainly not with people like this current President Tshisekedi, who has showed us that he's incapable of leading and managing that country. The proof is in the pudding. The country is too great to be led by such incompetence and such betrayal. The Congolese people deserve better. The Congolese victims deserve better. But it is up to us to rise up and stand up, grab the bull by the horn, working together, transforming that situation. Because again, a strong Congo, a strong Africa, will be to the benefit not only of Congolese and Africans, but the entire Global Pack community. I strongly, strongly believe that. Okay, folks, I'm going to end up here for today. Thank you very much for tuning in and supporting. As has become custom, I will end up with a quote, and today's quote will come to us from Patrice Lumumba. Since we've talked a lot about Patrice Lumumba, the quote that I have from Lumumba says, "We prefer freedom with poverty to wealth with tyranny." Oh, absolutely. I'd rather be poor, but have my freedom, than wealth and be subject to tyranny. 110%. But it also means, as Lumumba, who was a great fighter, it means we need to fight to get what we aspire to. We have the ability to do that. Let's not doubt in ourselves. All right, brothers and sisters, I'm going to end up here for today. Thank you very much for tuning in and supporting the Global Pack. Let me remind you, if you've not done so, please, there's 2 things I need your help with. Like, really, 2 things to help our community and this platform grow. The first thing, please click on the subscribe button. It only takes you a second. You could do it literally right now. Just poof, subscribe, and you become part of this platform, part of the community, because we are a community that grows together and that can materialize our goals and vision together. So subscribing helps a lot. 2, sharing. By sharing this content to people in your network, help advance our message and help the platform grow. Without you, we cannot do it. For those of you that are already part of this community, thank you very much for your support. I really, really appreciate it. And let me know what you think, by the way. When we come with this analysis and sometimes opinion pieces, let me know what you think. You think I'm totally wrong? Share your comments. Nobody has a monopoly of knowledge. I certainly don't. I've never claimed that. And I know that out of the clash of ideas comes the light, right? So debate and communication. So let me know what you think. Like, really, send your comments, send an email, and then we'll go from there. But thanks a lot again for your support. Remember, we are a strong people. We are a beautiful people. We are a special people. Don't let anybody convince you otherwise. Above all, we are. Until next time, peace be with you. Asante sana, which means thank you very much in Swahili. Remember, we are the Global Pack. Let's get to work.